are doing those trips to Bhutan with leaders, and I know primarily women, because you want to help them to develop their leadership skills through mindfulness and understanding of other culture. How you decided to start those trips?
Well, first of all, I do want to clarify that I call them learning journeys.
Learning journeys.
Learning journeys, because it's all about learning about yourself, and it's a journey within your lifelong journey. And this is just a stepping stone to your lifelong learning.
I see.
And from that perspective, I actually began my career in organizational development. So I would look at organizations and how do they achieve their profitability. And within that, what are the behaviors of leaders and teams that need to be in place to align with the organizational goals. And in that journey, I recognized that there had to be more. I couldn't focus on just the individual in the workplace. I had to focus on the individual as a whole. And I saw potential leadership skills in people, in young, talented people, and I wanted to find a way to help them see more about themselves. And it was not just women only, it was men as well. And I felt that they had to learn about themselves outside the workplace. And this is how I started thinking about these journeys. Now, my relationship with Bhutan has been long-term.
Okay.
Long term, because I was born on one side of Bhutan in India, and I was educated on the other side of Bhutan in India again. So I had a lot of Bhutanese people around me when I was growing up, and I recognized that they were so unique in their culture. It was a blend of humility, pride, respect, and an underlying sense of contentment, which I was fascinated about. And so when the country actually came up with the philosophy of gross national happiness.
Can you tell me more about this, please? Because I know that, you mentioned it several times in different articles and media about gross national happiness. Is how they measure what the happiness of people, or what exactly do they measure with that?
Well, the whole concept of gross national happiness actually began with the fourth king, who at the age of 17 ascended the throne. And he was asked what he would like to see his country develop as. And he came up with the concept that GDP alone is not enough. GDP must be hand in hand with GNH, which is gross national happiness. Therefore, all policies, government policies, must look into the concept of how does it impact the happiness level of the people collectively, not in isolation, small groups of people. And this is what drove the whole concept. Now, within the concept itself, there are actually 4 pillars, which looks at sustainable economic development, preservation of culture, conservation of environment, and good governance, which is all about leadership.
How did they measure?
And then the measurements come actually in the concept of 9 domains, which support the pillars. And they measure looking at living standards, which means the disparity between the haves and have-nots, bridging the gap. They look at health, physical and mental, psychological well-being, emotional and spiritual, education, formal and informal. Then they look at community vitality, cultural diversity and resilience, environmental diversity and resilience, and good governance, and time use. So time use, which is fascinating because it's one of the few countries that looks at how much time do you spend in a day getting to work, working, spending time with your friends, spending time with your family, getting enough sleep.
That's nice. I wish all countries would adopt it.
Exactly. So I took this whole concept and said, in Bhutan it applies to a nation, but you can take this whole framework and apply it to organizations and then apply it to the individual. So I started looking at, if you started with yourself individually, how does it impact you in the organization, and how would it impact an organization if there was a concept of happiness within organizations? But beyond that, what's the ripple effect you can create in communities? And this is where your CSR comes into play.
It's like a procession effect with the bumblebee who goes for the honey.
It's the ripple effect. Exactly. It's like we all have a responsibility towards not just ourselves and our organizations, but beyond. So how are you going to make that happen? But it starts with learning about it yourself. And it really looks at values, practices which support your values, and measurements which will help you understand whether or not you're making progress. So, I look at it, I say, okay, let's start with the individual. Let's go on a journey, learn about ourselves. And what can you take away? Now, people say, why would you go all the way to Bhutan? Well, sure, I can take you to a hotel next door, but what are the chances that you will actually see the benefit of it? So I take you to the place where this whole concept came up.
We often delay, our dreams and aspiration, thinking that we are not ready, we are not successful enough, or we don't have enough money or enough time.